Hello and welcome to AwesomeTube 956. Today we are doing a DIY video. It's going to be about replacing your dolly wheels. I had already replaced the other side, and on this one we're going to make sure that we have both wheels replaced. So I already done one. Here we are doing another one. So at this point I am taking off the pin that holds the wheel onto the axle. This stainless steel pin is in place and needs to be bent back to a straight profile in order to be pulled out. You're gonna notice that it has rust on it. We're gonna set it aside, and at this point the wheel is not able to easily come out, and by tapping on it I thought it could it could loosen it up, but the problem is worse than we think. The rust has rusted this front area where the washer is at, that holds this whole thing together, and it's gonna require more force, more labor. Now this is me getting frustrated. Right now I am tapping on the backside of this to try to help it move forward and out of the axle. So by me tapping on it in different areas will allow me to get this assembly out evenly. Right now I was just trying to loosen it up, see if I could even turn the washer, and I couldn't. At this point I got a bigger hammer and I started banging on it. All you're seeing me do is just try to work it out, and by me doing this is creating a lot of noise and disruption in my apartment, and I feel bad for my neighbors at this point. So right now as you can see, by tapping on this and hitting it, the whole dolly is moving towards the camera, and now we're getting an overexposed shot, and I'm rotating the wheel as I tap on it. That way I do not create too much dents or bends on one section of this wheel assembly. Because this wheel is still good, I will use it as a spare, and as you can see, it is getting loose now. And the trick to this is mainly just hitting it and tapping it out evenly. That way one side is not getting stressed out more than the other, and you're not making unnecessary bends and cracks in the wheel hub. At this point I turn the dolly right to its side and I pull up on the wheel as I gently pull it out. Now with all this force, it had led the inside bearing to remain stuck on the axle. At this point I want to make sure that this whole bearing section comes off, because it does have a metal sleeve, and I don't want to knock that metal sleeve out. So I am trying to gently tap this bearing out while I keep everything together. Not much to say about this, is pretty much just tapping it out and making sure that we do not break it. And we have our sandpaper that we're going to use to sand down this section where the rusted part is, because we do not want any rust when we put our grease on it. Now we are going to cut down our sandpaper to size so that we have a good size of sandpaper to work with. Now I'm giving you different angles so that you can see the way things are turning out. Once we remove the rust, you can see that it is it's starting to look a lot better. We want to take off as much rust as we can. If we don't take off 100% of the rust, it's okay. I believe that it will rust back over time. So the main thing is that we can remove enough rust so that we can put our new wheel on. And when we remove this rust, okay, at this point I'm gonna tap the bearing back into the old wheel. I'm gonna put it to the side, and the main thing is that we want to remove as much rust as we can so that the new wheel that we do put on does not have any chance of getting rusted quickly. You know, we want to slow down the process of rust on this axle and on the new wheel. So we got high temp lube, bearing lube. This is used on automobiles, but this application on this application is we could use this as well, because the wheel does have bearings. It's just these wheels are not rated for going at high speeds, and this lube is. So at this point there's an inner washer that I forgot to take off, and we are removing it. While we removed it, it had removed a thin layer of grease. So you're seeing a close-up shot of how it looks when we removed it, and some dirt. And we're just gonna clean that off, as well as clean off the inside of this axle and apply some lube to the area and lube to the washer. Now the amount of lube that you want to put on this is not that much. You just want it to be a thin layer and a thin coat of lube on all these moving parts and on the axle. Because the reason why we don't want too much lube is because if we have too much lube, that can actually hinder the motion of and the movement of this wheel, and it has a higher chance of getting gunked up and dirty. Right now you are seeing me trying to apply and put this wheel on. Even though we've removed the rust, it is still a tight fit, and right now hitting it at a sideways angle is not working, and to which one point I will put it on its side and start hitting downward, which will be more comfortable and and even when I'm applying the hits to seat it in place. So there's me, and as you can see, we have successfully mounted this wheel onto the axle of the dolly. At this point, I am going to show you what we do with the pin, because the pin did have some rust on it, and of course we need to make sure that we put our washer in there, and I'm applying a thin coat of lube, ball bearing grease, high temperature lube, and we are going to go ahead and clean off the pin because there's rust on the pin, and we want to make sure that there's as little rust as we can have on this assembly. I am just using the same sandpaper that I use for the axle on this pin. Once it gets good enough, I'm going to strain it out some more so that we don't have any problems installing this pin onto the axle. Now we're gonna just take a little bit of this grease and we're gonna also apply it to our pin, and this will help coat it and slow down any future rust that starts to develop on this pin. I am happy to say that I'm getting used to this new camera, and I am liking the features and the quality that's coming out of this camera, and I hope that you guys appreciate it too. As I mess with the exposure or brightness of my settings, you will see that the pin is seated into the axle, and all we got to do is push it through and then bend it. At this point we've got it through with no problem, and then we are going to use a needle nose plier to just bend the longer pin, the longer lead or longer piece, and that's all you have to do. You only have to bend one side, and that's how it came from the manufacturer. So the way it looks right now is acceptable, and I hope that you guys find this informational, educational, and we hope to see you on the next one. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment to help us and support us on our channel. Thanks.